They did call the police, we know that.
They did call police. We know that family members were looking for her and taking steps to try and find her.
Celeste Rivas made 11 phone calls and issued 11 frantic warnings prior to her death being discovered in rising star David's Tesla. Every call went unanswered, and every opportunity to save her was lost. Tonight, we unearth the FBI leaks that alter everything and expose the potential truth shopper. The terrible phone book, one of the most tragic mysteries in the entertainment industry, has been transformed into a massive investigation that now engulfs both federal authorities and millions of shocked fans due to the FBI leak that exposed 11 separate calls made by Celeste Rivas Hernandez, the deceased girlfriend of rising artist David, to law enforcement prior to her body being discovered. Journalists examined leaked internal documents, which law enforcement sources verified. These calls, which were placed at various points in 2024 and early 2025, were either disregarded, misclassified, or recorded in a manner that precluded their being escalated to the degree of urgency necessary for Celeste's situation. The revelation cuts right to the core of the developing story about Celeste's last year on Earth. This was more than just a case of a disturbed teenager going missing and then being discovered dead in a fancy car belonging to a well-known singer. Rather, the 11 emergency calls show a desperate trend of requesting assistance. Cries into the nothingness that, if handled correctly, could have been the difference in averting her demise, according to FBI officials. Her mutilated bones were subsequently found in the trunk of a Tesla that belonged to David, which only served to heighten the case's startling level of cultural intrigue. However, everything is reframed by the FBI leak. Celeste did not remain silent. She was actively looking for safety. Examining what was previously available to the public prior to the release of federal records is the first step in comprehending the scope of this leak. Celeste's tumultuous domestic life had previously been largely chronicled through interviews with friends, neighbors, and her ex-boyfriend, Damien. Numerous testimonies brought to light the instability she faced long before her abduction sparked a media frenzy. Damon explained in a TMZ Live interview how Celeste had made frequent jokes about fleeing. His testimony provided eerie insight into her delicate mental state.
We were at PE, and she told me, my friend, that she was running away. And she said it was because of her parents, and she was like joking about it, and she was like happy, like joking like she always was. And like it didn't seem real because like she was like playing around.
She was gone the next day. Following this abduction in January 2024, there was a pattern of police retrievals, brief homecomings, and subsequent disappearances. She was traced to Hollywood for one in February and another in March. The FBI release reframes these incidents, despite her family's repeated claims that they were caught off guard. Celeste was making recorded emergency calls from various locations during this precise time, describing abuse, threats, and at least 2 instances of being chased by unidentified people. The calls, which were made over the course of over a year, show inconsistencies with the story her family and police enforcement first told the public. According to early reports, she was last seen in person in March 2024 and had no further contact information. However, video surveillance later came to light showing Celeste alive in September 2024. TMZ was able to obtain footage from a neighbor's Nest camera showing her arguing outside an apartment building following a prank on her family's house.
Celeste is the woman you see there. She was arguing with the neighbors because some kids were...
6 months after her last absence, the video proved she was still alive and visible, which had chilling consequences. However, her presence in September 2024 no longer seems to be an isolated aberration, as the FBI log that was obtained reveals that emergency calls were made over the same period. It turns into proof of a larger trend. Long after her official case file said otherwise, Celeste was still alive, reachable, and making an effort to be heard by authorities. The reason and method of death were postponed in the September 2025 death certificate due to pending toxicology results. Although it said that Celeste was not pregnant and had not been in the previous year, which disproved a lot of internet conjecture over her purported relationship with David. The ambiguity simply made things more mysterious. According to the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's report on September 8, 2025, one day after her 15th birthday, her remains were found in a Tesla that had been seized in Hollywood. But between government documents, witness accounts, and now the leaked emergency calls, the chronology of her last known contacts remained fragmented. At least 3 of the calls, according to the FBI release, came from a Lake Elsinore neighborhood in March 2024, which is in line with surveillance footage that shows her jogging down a street in the same neighborhood. In September 2024, the Nest camera recording and another call take place at the same time. Particularly concerning are 2 calls made in July 2025, a few weeks before her remains were found, as they strongly imply she was still alive and in anguish at a time when most others thought she had already passed away. Although the complete contents of the calls have not yet been made public, law enforcement insiders have provided summaries that support her known movements. A contact in July 2025 mentioned being stranded close to a residence. Another said that she was being monitored by strangers. Police did not step in response to any of these reports. Rather, they were misrouted, logged, or classified as non-urgent. In addition to redefining Celeste from last month, the FBI release reveals systematic response shortcomings. The calls were sent to Riverside's local police department, as well as the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. A number of them were diverted between departments, resulting in unclear jurisdiction that prevented them from being settled. Her age, just 14 years old, was mentioned several times in the leak, but calls were either degraded or closed out without dispatch. These disclosures have had a devastating emotional toll on devotees. The shocking news that Celeste's remains were in the car of rising star Didid had already left many in shock. However, the FBI release clearly shows that she had been actively expressing grief and giving each institutional failure a moral significance. The exact anniversary overlap is the most eerie connection. On September 8, 2024, footage showed Celeste alive and disputing with neighbors. Her body was found in David's Tesla on September 8, 2025, which was precisely 1 year later.
What's really striking about this incident, though, is it is exactly 1 year before the body was discovered in David's Tesla, to the day.
Right.
Widespread conjecture has been stoked by this uncanny symmetry, which is now made worse by the realization that she was contacting people via emergency calls throughout both times. Was a protracted string of disregarded warnings connected to Celeste's demise? Or did officials just fail to stop a sudden escalation that resulted to her death? The FBI's public posture is still cautious at this point. David Anthony Burke, his true name, has not been identified by authorities as a suspect or even a person of interest. However, he is right in the middle of rumors because her death was found in a Tesla that was registered to him and left outside a house he rents for $20,000 a month. However, the focus has expanded due to the FBI disclosure. Who put Celeste's body in the car is no longer the only important question. It also addresses the reason that 11 of her emergency calls were overlooked. The agonizing revelation. In addition to being a startling event in and of itself, the finding of Celeste Rivas Hernandez's remains inside a Tesla that belonged to David marked the turning point in her personal sorrow into a public spectacle. The case was still mostly presented as a missing person case with intermittent sightings and unverified rumors until September 8, 2025. But it became a national scandal when it was revealed that her body had been dissected, decayed, and hidden in the front trunk of a high-end vehicle belonging to a well-known artist. The car had broken a 72-hour parking rule and been seized from a Hollywood neighborhood. The Tesla had been flagged for ticketing as early as August 27th, according to police data. It was hauled 2 days after being formally cited on September 3rd. Before workers made the grim find, the car sat in a direction for almost a week. The official death certificate stated September 8, 2025, as the date of discovery, but it postponed determining the reason and method of death until toxicology was completed. However, the uncanny timing was what caught people's notice almost instantly. Exactly 1 year prior, On September 8, 2024, Celeste was last seen on camera. On her 15th birthday, her remains were discovered. The FBI's revelation of the 11 calls she made prior to her death, along with the dates, mere coincidence, turned the tragedy into a never-ending conundrum. How could there have been so many missed warnings? How could a car associated with a celebrity go unnoticed for weeks? David Anthony Burke, a 20-year-old recording artist whose breakthrough track, Romantic Homicide, had received hundreds of millions of streams, was nearly immediately the center of attention. It was impossible to avoid the connection between the somber revelation inside his automobile and his music, which was frequently laced with themes of mortality. Despite repeated assurances from law enforcement that David had not been identified as a suspect or person of interest, his actions and public persona proved crucial to the investigation. Analysts started piecing together his timeline from late July to September 2025 by comparing eyewitness accounts, concert dates, and social media activities. According to a thorough account of his activities, David was traveling the United States when the Tesla sat abandoned in Los Angeles. This timetable raised questions about whether someone else was involved in the car's abandonment because it implied that it would have been logistically challenging for him to travel back to Los Angeles to move the vehicle. Confusion was increased by the fact that the vehicle was parked only 150 feet from a multi-million-dollar home. David quickly left the property he was renting for $20,000 a month when the car was linked to the investigation. Law authorities carried out a search warrant at the home, taking computers, devices, and evidence bags, according to TMZ. The LAPD stated that a number of pieces of evidence were found and will be examined by police in the days ahead, according to People magazine. The timetable became much more convoluted when law enforcement searched the residence. Was Celeste directly linked to the property by the evidence? Were communications between her and David supposed to be visible on digital devices? As of yet, no findings have been released to the public. The industry consequences, meanwhile, happened quickly. David's tour was abruptly canceled within days of the revelation. 9 scheduled European events were canceled after performances in San Francisco and Los Angeles on September 19th and 20th were canceled. Calendars no longer included promotional appearances, such as an event at the Grammy Museum. Well-known brands broke off relations. He was taken out of advertisements by Crocs and Hollister, and official channels stopped using his promotional photos. A halt in advertising for his forthcoming deluxe album release was announced by his label Intercope. Ironically, though, his social media following grew. Instagram attracted 25,000 followers in a single week, while Spotify recorded more than 22,000 new followers on September 13th. Despite corporate distance, Vice said that his online visibility skyrocketed due to popular excitement with the issue. This contrast between fan fixation and corporate rejection highlighted the ways in which true crime stories and celebrity culture interact. Because they saw him as a misunderstood person caught in a media frenzy, several followers were drawn to him because of the controversy. Others saw it as evidence that there was more sinister undertones to his artistic abilities. When combined with this timetable, the FBI's released information concerning 11 calls from Celeste took on new significance. Supporters started analyzing whether David may have disregarded her cries for assistance directly or indirectly. Although there is currently no proof linking him to the calls, there was conjecture that Celeste may have attempted to get in touch with him during the time she also contacted law enforcement. The severity of her suffering in the months leading up to her passing was indisputable. Was weighed about 70 pounds when was recovered, according to autopsy documents, which is far less than the 120 pounds reported on missing persons posters. This supported the theory that she had been dead for weeks before to discovery and implied extended malnourishment and decay. Whether Celeste's last days were spent inside the Tesla or if her body was relocated after her death has not been made clear by investigators. Retired detectives contacted by media outlets noted that the long period the car stayed untouched in Los Angeles implies deliberate abandonment. The issue yet stands. Did those in charge just run out of time, or was the Tesla meant to be discovered? This is made even more difficult by the FBI release. At least 2 of the 11 recorded conversations from July 2025 imply Celeste was still alive a few weeks prior to her recuperation. If accurate, this indicates that she passed away far sooner than previously thought, close to the date the car was impounded. Additionally, it's more likely that her body was later put in the Tesla if it was abandoned when she was still alive. According to reports, detectives are using forensic evidence to look into this terrifying circumstance. Fans interpreted the lyrics of David's 2022 song Romantic Homicide as spooky foreshadowing, sparking new internet speculation. However, legal experts emphasize that there is no evidence linking David's creative work to the case. William Corman, a criminal defense lawyer, summed up the approach that any defense team would suggest. Fan-driven speculation has increased as a result of this quiet. The court of public opinion remains strongly divided between those calling for responsibility and others protecting the artist's presumed innocence in the absence of formal charges. The Tesla revelation solidified the catastrophe as one of the most unsettling confluences of celebrity, police incompetence, and adolescent susceptibility in recent history. The inquiry is still ongoing. Celeste Rivas Hernandez made 11 distinct emergency calls, and the FBI acknowledged them. This is no longer merely a formality. It is the distinguishing characteristic of a case that has developed into one of the most eerie unresolved tragedies in recent memory. In addition to being a terrible response failure, the fact that these calls were disregarded, devalued, or misdirected is a terrifying testament to how weak people, especially children, can disappear into administrative voids while pleading for assistance. International headlines have been generated by the finding of Celeste's body inside a Tesla that was registered to musician David. However, emergency calls take up the majority of conversations in investigative circles. They represent lost opportunities for intervention to federal agents. They serve as evidence to supporters that despite her best efforts to survive, Celeste was let down at every turn. Computers, phones, and digital storage devices were among the items the LAPD and FBI seized during their search warrant execution on the Hollywood Hills residence David was renting. According to law enforcement officials, detectives were looking for any evidence connecting Celeste to the residence, and the things will be examined in the days ahead. According to TMZ, the search was centered on possible biological evidence, such as DNA, hair fibers, blood traces, or other signs that could verify whether she had ever been inside the house. Perhaps more important than tangible proof, however, were the digital conversations that investigators hoped to find. Throughout the month that she was making emergency calls, was Celeste in direct communication with David? Did she have digital markers, pictures, or notes connecting her to his inner circle? There are still unsolved questions. Tattoo evidence was one of the most eerie identifiers in the case. Law enforcement was able to verify Celeste's identity after her remains were retrieved thanks to a finger tattoo design that she reportedly shared with David. Online indignation followed this discovery. Why was the relationship ignored since she had previously been publicly linked to the artist through tattoos? How come authorities did not step in when she phoned for assistance, even though social media users had been speculating about a relationship months beforehand? This discrepancy between online rumors and official actions has emerged as the main source of fan ire. The FBI leak offers sobering new information. At least 5 of the 11 recorded conversations clearly mentioned that she felt scared around elderly people. Her age of 14 was included in the call notes, according to the archives. Nevertheless, no welfare checks were started. Protocols for missing children were not raised. Rather, her remarks were categorized as juvenile disruptions or domestic disagreements, which ensured no follow-up.